Welcome to the Deep Dive. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So, I want to start things off today with a question for you. And it's a little personal, maybe even a little silly.
Uh-oh. Okay, I'm ready.
Be honest with me here. Have you ever, maybe while you're just waiting in line at the grocery store or scrolling on your phone late at night, just stop to check your horoscope?
Oh, man. Yeah, I think everyone is at least peaked, right?
Yeah.
Even the most hardened skeptics. You're just flipping through an app and you have that, that moment of curiosity, like, what does the universe have in store for Gemini today?
Exactly. It's just so culturally ubiquitous.
It really is.
And usually it's about very specific, very me-centered things, like, is romance in the air?
Or should I avoid signing contracts on Tuesday?
Yes. Or is Mercury in retrograde messing up my Wi-Fi again? It's just hyper-focused on the individual. But today, we are diving into a stack of documents that, well, it claims we have been reading the sky completely wrong for thousands of years.
Yeah, it's a really bold claim. We are looking at a text by a Bible teacher, Pastor Leon Emmanuel, and it's titled The Interpretation of Sky Stars.
Right.
And to be clear right off the bat, this is not your daily newspaper horoscope.
Not at all.
This isn't about whether you're going to have a lucky week or find a parking spot.
No, the stakes here are much, much higher. The author argues that the Zodiac, or to use the Hebrew term the source prefers, the Mazzaroth, it wasn't originally about fortune-telling at all.
Not even a little bit.
The argument is that the Constellations are actually God's first picture book.
Yeah, a visual prophecy.
Right, a prophecy of the gospel, written stars light years away, long before a single word of the Bible was penned on a scroll.
It is a massive paradigm shift. The source posits that the 12 constellations actually tell a continuous, linear story of redemption.
Which is wild to think about.
It really is. It starts with a virgin birth and ends with the conquering lion. And the reason we associate the Zodiac with fortune-telling today.
Right, the daily horoscopes.
Exactly. The author describes all of that as a result of a massive, ancient identity theft.
Identity theft on a cosmic scale. I just love that setup.
It's fascinating.
So our mission today for this deep dive is to decode this ancient sky map. We're going to look at how, according to this source, the stars declare the glory of God, how that message was allegedly hijacked by some very famous historical villains, and then we'll walk through the actual signs.
Virgo, Libra, Capricorn.
Right, to see what this text says they really mean.
And stick around.
But let's start with the basics.
Okay.
Why stars? I mean, if you're the creator and you want to send a message to humanity, why write it in dots of light that are trillions of miles away?
It's a fair question.
Why not just carve it into a mountain or, I don't know, write it in the clouds?
That makes sense to ask. The source argues it really comes down to permanence and universality. Pastor Emmanuel cites Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 through 16.
Okay.
Most people know the part about the lights dividing day from night, but the text really highlights that God made them specifically for signs.
Signs, like a billboard on the highway.
Precisely. A sign's entire job is to point to something else. It communicates information.
It's not just there to look pretty.
Exactly. The source places a huge amount of weight on Psalm 19. It's a very famous passage. The heavens declare the glory of God.
Right.
But the author argues we've really softened that verse over the years. We tend to read it as poetry.
Like, oh, look at the sunset. God is such a great artist.
Yeah, it feels like a mood, not a message.
But the source says it's literal.
Much more literal. The song continues, day unto day utters speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge.
Reveals knowledge.
Right, the source emphasizes that word, knowledge. It says their voice goes out to the ends of the earth. Think about the world before the printing press.
Before the internet.
Even before written language was widespread. What is the only thing that every single person on earth, regardless of their tribe or language, could see?
The night sky. It's the original global broadcast.
Exactly. It's a silent language, a visual narrative. And the source brings in the book of Job to seal this deal.
Job is really old, right?
Very old. Scholars consider Job one of the oldest books in the Bible, possibly predating Moses and the Torah. So Job didn't have a Bible to read.
He just had the sky.
And in chapter 38, God is questioning Job, humbling him, really. He asked Job, can you bind the cluster of the Pleiades, or loose the belt of Orion? Can you bring out Mazzaroth in its season?
There's that word again, Mazzaroth.
Yes. Mazzaroth is the specific Hebrew term for the 12 signs of the Zodiac.
Wow.
By asking if Job can lead them out, the text argues that God is claiming authorship of them. He established their order, their motion, and crucially, their meaning.
Okay, I follow the logic. If God wrote this story in the stars, a story about redemption and Jesus, how on earth did we end up with the horoscope section in a magazine?
Right. How did it change?
How did it go from the glory of God to you will meet a tall, dark stranger?
This is where the source introduces the villains of the story. It describes what it calls a great corruption.
A corruption.
The text points specifically to Nimrod, the founder of Babylon and the system he built.
Nimrod, the Tower of Babel guy?
The very same. The source paints a picture of a historical shift. The original knowledge of the stars, which was known to the ancients, perhaps even passed down from Adam, was hijacked.
Hijacked.
The claim is that fallen angels, and subsequently Nimrod and his wife, twisted the definitions.
So it's kind of like they took the original movie, kept the exact same visuals, but dubbed over the dialogue with a totally different script.
That is a perfect analogy. The source describes it as spiritual identity theft.
Wow.
Nimrod, according to the text, projected himself into the role of the Messiah that was promised in the stars.
He made it about himself.
Exactly. He took the prophecies about a coming savior, which were written in the constellations, and applied them to himself and his own mythological system. This is what created the counterfeit system.
Astrology.
Right.
So the shift was from worshiping the creator through the sign to worshiping the sign itself.
And focusing on the self. That's the key pivot. Instead of the stars telling the objective story of God's plan for humanity, they became about my luck,
My future.
my personality type. The source calls this the lying zodiac.
Okay, let's try to strip away that lying layer then. Let's unpack the true zodiac, according to this source. If we want to read the story the way it was originally intended, where do we even start? Modern horoscopes usually start with Aries, right?
They do, usually aligning with the vernal equinox. But this source argues the story is circular and linear. To understand the narrative properly, you have to start with Virgo and end with Leo.
From the Virgin to the Lion.
Exactly.
That sounds very Narnia. Let's dive into Virgo.
So Virgo. The visual is a woman. But the source asks us to look closely at the details. In the ancient depictions, she is almost always holding something specific.
What is it?
A branch or a sheaf of wheat containing a seed.
A seed, okay.
Yes. The text connects this directly to the seed of the woman prophecy in Genesis 3.15.
The very first promise in the Bible.
Right, that a woman's offspring would crush the serpent. The source interprets Virgo not just as a harvest symbol, but as a depiction of the Virgin Mary, or in a broader sense, Israel or Zion.
But the focus is on what she is bringing forth.
The seed. Jesus.
Does the source offer any linguistic proof for this? Or is it just relying on the fact that it looks like a woman?
No, it actually digs deep into the star names. This is where it gets really interesting. It notes the star Zavijava.
Zavijava?
The source translates this as the glorious beautiful, or the beautiful Lord. It also references Spica, the brightest star in the sheaf, which is often associated with the branch.
Okay, so the first chapter of the Sky story is basically the Messiah will be born of a virgin.
You've got it.
That puts us firmly on the path. Let's move along the circle to Libra. Now, I've always thought of Libra as the scales of justice.
Sure.
You know, blind justice, legal courts, balancing right and wrong.
And that is the common modern understanding. But the source flips that perspective completely. It argues that if you look at the star names, it's not about justice in the sense of a judge making a ruling between two parties.
What is it then?
It represents the price.
The price, like a transaction.
Exactly. Think of scales in an ancient marketplace.
Yeah.
You use them to weigh out payment. The interpretation here is that humanity was weighed on these scales and found wanting. We were deficient in glory.
We had a moral debt we couldn't pay.
Yes. So it's essentially a receipt of debt.
Wow.
And the star names are incredibly specific here too. The source highlights Zubin al-Janubi,
Zubin al-Ganubi.
which it translates as the price is heavy, or the purchase. And the other main star, Zubin al-Chamali, means the covering payment.
The price is heavy. That's profound. It's telling a theological story. You are in debt, and it's a big one.
And that leads logically to the solution for that debt. You have the virgin birth, the debt identified, now you need a payment.
Right.
Let's skip ahead a bit to Sagittarius.
The archer. The centaur. Half man, half horse. Now, I have to be honest, this one always seemed the most Greek myth to me.
Oh, totally.
How does a centaur fit into a biblical narrative? It feels like we're drifting into fantasy.
It definitely seems that way at first glance. But the source argues that the centaur, this figure with two distinct natures, is actually a corrupted memory of the concept of the God-man.
Oh, the dual nature of the Messiah. Fully God, fully man.
Exactly. And look at the action. What is the archer doing? He's not just posing. He has an arrow drawn, and he is aiming it at a very specific target.
Where is he aiming?
If you look at the sky map, his arrow is pointed directly at the heart of Scorpio, the scorpion.
The enemy.
Right. The source frames this as the warrior aspect of the Messiah. And there is a fascinating linguistic nugget here the author brings up.
Let's hear it.
The Hebrew word for horse is sus, and the name Jesus is linked to Yahshua, and in some transliterations, Yasus.
Okay.
The source draws a connection there, calling him Yahweh's horse, or God's warrior. It's a picture of Jesus coming with swiftness to destroy the enemy. It reframes the monster into a theological diagram of Christ's nature.
That is quite a unique connection. God's horse. I've never heard that before.
It connects to the imagery in Revelation of the rider on the white horse, but before the conquering, there has to be the sacrifice.
The payment for that heavy price we talked about in Libra.
Exactly. And that brings us to what I think is the strangest, most baffling image in the entire Zodiac.
Capricorn.
Capricorn. The
Yeah.
goat. But it's not just a goat, right? If you look at the old drawings, it's a sea goat.
It is a hybrid. The front half is a goat and the back half is a fishtail.
Which makes zero sense biologically. A goat with a fishtail would just drown.
Or flop around uselessly on the beach. Biologically, it's absurd. But symbolically.
Symbolically, it works.
The source argues it's the absolute heart of the gospel. You have to read the two halves separately. Break it down for us.
The goat represents the sacrificial animal, the sin offering of the Old Testament. The text points out that in the constellation, the goat appears to be dying. His leg is curled under, his head is bowed.
So the goat half is dying.
The goat dies. But out of that death comes the tail of a fish. Now, in the New Testament, what is a major symbol for the believer?
The fish. The fishers of men. The early Christians even used the fish symbol, the ichthys, to identify themselves.
Exactly. And the fish tail in the constellation is depicted as vigorous and alive.
I see where this is going.
So out of the death of the sacrifice, the goat, comes life for the believers, the fish.
It's a picture of resurrection. The death of one produces life for the many.
It's surprisingly coherent when you look at it that way. The Force argues that the ancients didn't draw the sea goat because they believed such a creature actually existed in the ocean.
They drew it because they needed a hieroglyph.
Right. They needed an image to explain a complex theological concept, atonement.
That actually makes the weirdness of the image make complete sense. Okay, let's do one more of the major signs. Aquarius. The water bearer.
This one is very visual. You have a man pouring a pitcher of water. But the key is, where is the water going?
Into the mouth of a fish, usually.
Specifically, the source links this to the constellation Piscis Austrinus, the southern fish. The interpretation is the outpouring.
The outpouring.
It connects to the biblical promise where God says, I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. It's the living water, the Holy Spirit, being poured out onto the church, represented by that fish drinking it up.
So if we zoom out for a second, we have a sequence here. The virgin birth with Virgo, the Christ paid in Libra, the dual nature warrior of Sagittarius, the sacrificial death and resurrection of Capricorn, and the outpouring of the Spirit in Aquarius.
It forms a very clear theological timeline.
It really does.
It does. And the source adds another layer of detail that strengthens this sequence even more. It talks about the deacons.
Deacons, like the guys who pass the collection plate in church.
Not quite those deacons. The word comes from deacons, meaning parts or tens. In ancient astronomy, each major sign has 3 minor constellations associated with it.
Okay.
And they serve to clarify or expand the meaning of the main sign.
Can you give us an example of how a deacon changes the story?
Let's take Taurus, the bull. Now, usually we think of Taurus as a sturdy, maybe stubborn farm animal.
Right.
But the source interprets Taurus as the rushing judge, the Messiah, returning with power. His horns are set against the enemy. But riding on the shoulder of the bull is a famous star cluster, the Pleiades.
The 7 sisters.
Right. The source interprets the Pleiades as the congregation of believers, the church.
Oh, wow.
So the picture isn't just a charging angry bull. It's the judge returning with his saints. They're riding on his shoulder, safe and secure in the midst of judgment.
That changes the whole vibe of the constellation. It goes from just an angry animal to a rescue mission.
Exactly.
What about Gemini, the twins?
This is a really sweet one. Usually Gemini is Castor and Pollux, 2 brothers from Greek myth. But the source interprets the ancient imagery as a groom and a bride.
A wedding couple.
Yes. walking together. The source notes that one figure holds a club, symbolizing victory and strength, and the other holds a harp, symbolizing praise and beauty.
The groom and the bride.
It's the ultimate union of Christ, the groom, and the church, the bride. The deacons around Gemini help tell this story of union and fellowship.
This is all incredibly theological. It's beautiful, honestly. But I want to pivot for a second because the source actually takes a pretty sharp detour into hard science.
Yes, the science section.
And oysters.
Yes, this is important. The author anticipates people asking, okay, this is a nice story, but do stars actually do anything to us physically? Is there any real power up there?
Right. Is it just a picture book or is there a battery hooked up to it?
The source argues that celestial bodies do have real physical influence. It cites a study by a biologist named Dr. Frank Brown.
Tell us about the oysters.
So Dr. Brown took live oysters from the ocean in Connecticut and shipped them 1,000 miles inland to a lab in Illinois.
Okay, quite the trip for an oyster.
Right. Now, oysters are creatures of rhythm. They usually open and close their shells in sync with the ocean tides so they can feed.
And the tides are driven by the moon's gravity.
Correct. But in Illinois, there is no ocean. There are no tides. So Dr. Brown kept them in a tank in a dark room with constant temperature. He wanted to see if they would stick to the Connecticut tide schedule.
And did they?
For about 2 weeks, they did. They kept the exact Connecticut beat. But then something strange happened. They shifted.
Shifted how?
They started opening and closing to a totally new rhythm. Dr. Brown was baffled. He did the math and realized they had synchronized to what the tide would be in Illinois if the ocean stretched that far inland.
Whoa.
They were reacting directly to the position of the moon over Illinois, even though they were inside a building, in a closed tank, nowhere near the sea.
That is wild. So they were essentially sensing the moon's position through the walls of the lab.
Exactly. The source uses this study and also some crime statistics linking full moons to higher rates of arson and assault to make a very nuanced point.
What's the point?
The argument is, yes, the heavenly bodies have physical power. They influence tides, biology, maybe even hormones or moods. That's just scientific reality.
But I feel like there is a big but coming here.
Huge but. The source draws a very hard line. Just because the moon affects your biology does not mean it should rule your theology.
That makes sense.
The corruption, according to the source, happens when humans take that physical natural influence and try to turn it into spiritual guidance.
It's the difference between acknowledging that the sun warms your face and worshiping the sun as a god.
Precisely. The source argues that using the stars for horoscopes, for trying to predict your personal destiny, is a demonic corruption. It's taking a physical mechanism and the glory of God narrative and twisting it all into a tool for self-obsession.
So the stars definitely have a voice, but we're just listening on the wrong frequency.
That's a great way to put it. The source suggests we should look up with awe, but not with superstition.
As we start to wrap this up, this document really reframes the whole night sky. It's not just a random collection of dots, and it's definitely not a magic 8-ball for your love life. It's a hijacked heritage.
That is the core message of the text. We have a universe that was created as a visual storybook of redemption. History, specifically figures like Nimrod, hijacked that story, and now this text is attempting to read it again through its proper theological lens.
And there was one more connection the source made about the 12 tribes, right? We didn't have time to go super deep into it, but it sounded like a whole other rabbit hole.
Oh, it really is. The source correlates each of the 12 major signs to one of the 12 tribes of Israel, and also to the 12 precious stones on the high priest's breastplate.
So it all ties together.
Exactly. It reinforces the idea that the author sees this as a totally interconnected system. Sky, scripture, and history all weaving the exact same pattern. The author doesn't see these as random coincidences. It's a unified, deliberate design.
It's a lot to take in the next time you look up at the night sky. You won't just see the Big Dipper anymore. You might see a story of cosmic battle and redemption.
It changes the view completely. And I think the final thought from the source is the most important one to leave with today.
What's that?
The author emphasizes that you don't need a horoscope to know your future. The stars were never about you.
They were about him.
Exactly. They were always about the Creator. When you look up, you aren't supposed to see a mirror reflecting your own ego. You're supposed to see a portrait of the King.
That is a really powerful place to end the discussion of the source material. But it leaves me with one final thought to mull over, and something for you listening to think about too.
Let's hear it.
If this source is right, and the constellations really are God's first picture book, then looking at the night sky means you are reading the exact same manuscript that Abraham or Job looked at.
The oldest surviving text in human history.
Exactly. Unchanged, untranslated, just hanging right there above us every single night. Whether you're an astronomy buff, a theology nerd, or just someone who wonders what's up there, I hope this deep dive gave you a totally new perspective on the stars.
Keep looking up.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next deep dive.